for the first time. This is a conference by LNet. Normally, there's usually an yearly conference that happens. And this year, as hard as it may seem, we are having it online, but we trust that the platform will not be a hindrance, but rather it will be just another session where we can grow. Yesterday, we started on a keynote address, and it was on ethical leadership through crisis. A few things that Dr. Oginde insisted is that the only thing that can make any leader to stand is their foundation, because normally a crisis only tests if the foundation has been built on a rock or if the foundation has been built on sand. And he was using the analogy that is found in Matthew 7 that talks about two builders. One who built his house on sand and the other one who built his house on rock. And therefore, he was just challenging us that we need to build our foundation. As leaders in our organization, we need to build foundation that are not faulty, so that when crises come, then we will be able to stand. And also he was quick to say that one of the key thing that a leader should have or an organization should have is integrity, especially either in your personal area or even in the organization, that you should strive to lead with integrity. I think one of my take homes for yesterday is the 4 things that he talked about personal attributes that are necessary for any leader. And one of them was confidence, that our world should never be built on what we own, but rather our confidence should be in God and who he has called us. And then our second thing was competence. And he insisted that the reason people take shortcuts is because they have not been competent enough in their skills. So we should strive to be competent in whatever field the Lord has called us. Then the other thing was on courage, that we need courage to remain ethical and to stand before kings unbowed. I think he used an example of Daniel in the 3 men, that they were able to stand before the king, and their confidence was built over time. It started by them saying no to food that would defile them, and then it went to them saying no to the point of they would say no even if that thing would take them into fire. Then the last thing is consistency. That small things, small wins is what will make us eventually win. And therefore, he insisted that we should practice consistency in every tiny details of our life. That it's only when we are consistent in small things, then will we be able to conquer those big things. And one of the things that he used probably when he was speaking about corruption is when you do not punish evil, that it can only grow. Evil is like a weed that if you do not remove it, then one day it can even empower and overwhelm the main plants. And therefore, it's up to us from our homes to our organization, even before we go to the country level, that we punish evil so that it doesn't grow, that we speak up, that we can rally people behind who will stand up and speak against evil. I think that is the much I would say. I hope you will practice the principle of small wins which eventually will help us to build up to something tangible. Having said that, I think I would like to introduce the moderator for today, who will help us to just take us to the next level. Probably she will also help to invite our two speakers for today. Her name is Clarion Makongo. She's an information system auditor and an ethical hacker by profession. She's passionate about governance matters, and she is a future leader. She's also a member of the LNet Youth Forum. Clarion, if you can hear me, please welcome and karibu.
Thank you so much, sis. I hope you can hear me loud and clear. Yeah, please, whoever, if you can hear me, you can see me, just wave. You can just open your videos and wave. Let's know that we are together. Good. Yeah, so thanks all for joining. It's my joy to be your moderator today. And thanks sis for introducing me. As you've heard, my name is Clarion, and that is all about myself. And so at this point, I'll just introduce our the panelists for today. And today we are having two great people who have experience in these matters. And so our panelists will have I don't know if I should consider gender. I go with ladies first, or yeah, I can see Dr. Abram telling me it's okay. So fine. We'll go with ladies first, and so we have Dr. Musimbi. I hope I pronounced well, Dr. Musimbi Ondeko, and we also have Dr. Abraham Rugo. And so a little bit of just some little profile about Dr. Musimbi. Just a minute as I collect myself. Awesome. Okay, yeah, sorry for that. Yes, so Dr. Musimbi M. Ondeko graduated from Sherman College in US, that is in the year 1980. Yeah, I know most of my fellow peers and age mates who are not yet born. Ondeko returned to Kenya and worked at public Kenyatta National Hospital, that is free healthcare, for 3 years, and then started her own private practice where she is to date. And she enjoys serving people from all over Kenya, other countries in the region, and from many parts of the world. Yeah, so she's also the founder of CAK. I call it CAK because I cannot really pronounce the first word, especially that one that starts with C. So I'll give her an opportunity to tell us more about that. And she is married with 4 adult children. Yes. So our other panelist is Dr. Abraham, and I'll just tell us a brief introduction of Dr. Abraham so that he'll also have time to tell us more about himself. Dr. Abraham has over 9 years experience in public policy related work. He's currently an independent consultant on devolution, public policy, and leadership. He has immense experience in research, analysis, advocacy, and consulting with a special focus on decentralized financing and participation, urbanization, and youth development in Kenya. He previously worked at the Institute of Economics Affairs, that is IEA Kenya, in 2007 to 2013, and Focus Kenya. So he's pursuing a PhD in public management at the University of Potsdam and holds a Master of Public Management from the same university. Yeah, so these are our panelists for today. And before we just roll on to questions, I want to give them at least a minute each to say what I didn't mention, and then we get going. So once again, ladies first. Karibu sana, Dr. Musimbi. Over to you, Dr.
Thank you. Thank you, Clarion. Thank you very much, and good evening to all of us here this evening. It's a tremendous pleasure for me to be here on this panel with Dr. Abraham, and I look forward to being able to discuss this whole idea of personal responsibility, especially when it comes to governance, because governance is an issue that needs to be taken seriously by each and every person who is either a member of a group, a member of an organization, a company, or whatever it is, or even a nation such as ours. Each one of us has a certain amount of responsibility that we need to take on, and take on with all boldness and courage, as we have been told. And so it's going to be interesting to hear more about what you have to say so that we can learn from each other, because you will be telling us a lot of things by the way that you will ask your questions. I am a chiropractor, Clarion. CAK is Chiropractic Association of Kenya. And so it's been a tremendous privilege for me to be a chiropractor as a pioneer in this country. But then at the same time, I have had a lot of passion concerning leadership. And governance is about leadership. And so as a result, I have been with ELNET for a good many years, perhaps even longer than some of you have been born, perhaps, I don't know. But nonetheless, it's been a tremendous privilege for us to be able to work together with other ELNET members. I don't know how many of you are aware that it is ELNET members who had a tremendous impact on the values upon which we base our constitution in this country. And so it's wonderful to have all of you here today, and we look forward to working together as we go forward. Thank you, Clarion.
Thanks so much, Doc. Now over to Abraham. Please have a minute.
Thank you so much, Clarion, for the opportunity. It's also a great joy for me to join this conversation. And I think the part of the profile that you got is slightly older. So I've since finished my PhD. So last time I'm quoted to be using doctor while still doing a PhD. And currently working at the International Budget Partnership as a country director for Kenya. Been working in this space for some time. I'm a Christian, a born-again Christian, and I'm not ashamed of the faith that I hold. It's perhaps my greatest drive as to what I engage in and why I engage the way I engage. And therefore, when I was invited for this evening conversation, I was like, wow, personal responsibility, what can one share? There's a lot to say out here. It's been a unique year in every way. It's been extremely strange for some people, extremely rewarding for others, quite confusing for a majority, and maybe it's just somewhere there for the rest of us. And therefore, happy to share this evening on what, by God's grace, in every way, we've been able to engage and some of the lessons that we have learned and I have learned this evening will be great joy to be able to share.
Awesome. So well, we'll just dive directly to our agenda today. And one thing is what has brought us today is to talk about our personal responsibility. In what? Of course, in the governance crisis and all that. And so I've been getting comments from people talking about personal responsibility. What is my personal responsibility as a person when all these things are happening and all that? And so I know many guys are here with questions and all that. And so as we start the discussion, I'd ask us to write our questions in the chat, in the chat room so that we engage much. But then to get us started, there's one thing that I've been thinking about, and you find that crisis can be inductive. of the viability of an existing order. And so the COVID-19 crisis has revealed many truths about our governance systems, which maybe already are far from just being stable. And so it's becoming apparent that if we retain the same governance models that got us here today, then the incidents and of course the consequences of all this or the probability of future crises will just outstrip our capacity to respond to them effectively. And so in this context, that we need more critical reflection across the disciplinary boundaries and beyond the existing paradigms. Maybe the question here is the crisis can be indicative of the viability of the existing order, and the COVID-19 crisis has revealed many truths about our governance systems, which were already far from being stable. Now, it's becoming apparent that if we retain the same governance models that got us here today, the incidence and the severity of future crises will outstrip our capacity to respond to them effectively. Now, it is in this context that we need more critical reflection across disciplinary boundaries and maybe beyond existing paradigms on the limits of existing governance systems to solve the same issues and maybe have innovative ways to address future governance crises. And so the question here is, how are existing governance systems responding to crisis? And are they themselves in crisis? Yeah, so maybe we can first hear from Dr. Abraham, then we get to hear from Dr. Musimbi.
Thanks, Clarion. Whenever I have thought about the situation that we found ourselves in, I think the question that you ask, is the system also in crisis? Now, any system of governance so what is a governance framework? Is that every people of every society, whether we think that society is primitive or is civilized, has a form of governance, has a form in which decisions about how resources are determined and are allocated and spent are decided, right from, I mean, even when those of us who follow the Christian faith and who subscribe to the Christian faith, even from the biblical times and even from the traditional society as we know it, people have always organized themselves. Now, they've always organized themselves to be able to achieve certain objectives. And one of those great objectives is order. Order whereby it is clear of who makes certain decisions, and order as to who then almost like a hierarchical kind of a process. But let's come to the situation of what COVID has presented to us. I believe that the system that has come to be established, the system that has come to find itself, is almost like a reverse framework. What do I mean by a reverse framework? That in any society, there are three broad objects that we seek to establish. One is the value of people and the things that matter to them. The second thing is the processes upon which that value is determined, is maintained, and is advanced in that sense. And that's what you would say, for instance, that's why we come up with, economic frameworks that reward those who work and that pays certain people more wages than others, because it is determined that they bring certain great value to the society that they live in. But the third one is results, that we want to see a certain outcome for the engagements that we do. Now, If we were then to argue, and some of the writings of, among other people, Stephen Covey in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he traces that as we moved along, we started with people. Over time, people started being of lesser value and almost became means of production. Like one of the inputs that you have, it's like you just need to switch on, people get into work, they produce for you. Then we started emphasizing on processes, what you would call means that determine the end. And then we finally, now, it got to a time when our society, including our governance frameworks, are only interested about results. And that all that matters is that you make money. Nobody asks, how do you make money? How many people have you pushed into poverty in the process of making your money? How many people have you trampled on? How many people have even died and lost livelihoods as you try to pursue results? So in this reversed order, results come first. Then the means of the results, which is what I talked about, the processes follow, and people basically become, almost the last thing. Now, because of that, when COVID struck, what did it strike first is the results. Companies' bottom line started going down. The processes of movement, of transportation, of flights and cargo movement and everything else started crumbling. And finally, people came back to the reality that after all, what matters is people, is that I am alive and I am well. And therefore, that is the crisis that we find ourselves in, whereby the value of the human being has been trampled upon, and only the thing that seems to be exalted. Come to our governance frameworks, and this has been revealed. Almost every society, every country that I know of right now is in a crisis. Why is it in a crisis? Because the political order, the political framework that has more sought what the leaders get and those who are in those positions get, and do not necessarily care for the people, it has been laid bare. You saw the crisis when the famous reggae was stopped, and there was no possibility to be able to meet with people. There was almost a crisis, and there's almost like a push. Right now, doctors and nurses are going to, almost going on strike, and Dr. Musimbi can say more about that. It's when you put the things that should be last, you put them first, and that for me is the results, and you put people last when they should be first. I think that's a crisis. What is the value of human beings? Or are they just human doings, as it were? I stop there for now.
Thank you, Dr. Perhaps what I want to do is look at this particular question of yours from the actual idea of why we are here this evening. We are here this evening because we want to look at the personal responsibility of governance in crisis. And too often we forget that we as a people have a responsibility in that governance. When we say we, the people of Kenya, in our preamble to the Constitution, governance is about all of us. You cannot be pointing fingers when you yourself have not put an effort from your personal responsibility. Personal is about me. Responsibility is about having a duty to perform where you are accountable. And the governance is about a group of people coming together with 3 basic issues. We're talking about authority. We have given authority to a certain group of people, and they're supposed to make certain decisions, and they're supposed to remain accountable. And so when we look at the Constitution, and we as individuals are supposed to be looking at public participation in that governance, let us remember that we are all part of that governance. And when crisis comes along, crisis is perhaps what we would call a change. Something that was not expected to happen. And so we need change leadership in a situation like that. And so what we are asking is, do we have sufficient change leaders within our governance to be able to take on the crisis and to manage it well, to make the right decisions and to remain accountable for those decisions that are being made? We might get lost in the whole idea of just COVID. When I look at myself, and if I am a director in a company, or I'm a board member, have I taken on the responsibility within that board to do what is necessary to be able to come through a crisis with a certain end that might be better than what we might have expected? Have I been taken on the idea that I am responsible? Have I taken on the idea that I must think out of the box in this particular situation? Am I a change leader so that I can do the right thing? Before I even come to the entire country, what am I doing at my particular level to make sure that what I have done is going to be, how can I put it, a contribution to the entire governance model? And so the question you're probably asking is, do we have the capacity within the current governance model of our country to be able to take on crisis? Unfortunately, because we, the people, have always pointed fingers at the people whom we have decided to give the responsibility to make decisions, we do not give feedback sufficiently. Like for us today, we are discussing about personal responsibility. Are we going to take a personal responsibility to make sure that in the future, our governance model is going to be able to take up the task in another change, where crisis is change? Do we have sufficient change leaders who are competent enough to be able to take on that particular crisis? COVID is just one of them. How many other crises do we have? We have fires. We have all sorts of diseases that come up. We had HIV. Did we handle it well? Have we learned from the various different crises that we have come through? Are we needing to change the governance, or are we needing to change the mindset of all of us so that we're able to take on that responsibility when we are called upon to do so? And so let us not point fingers. Let us begin to look at what is it that we as individuals must do to make sure that as a constitutional responsibility, we are going to publicly participate in order to make sure that the next time we have a crisis, the things that we have seen wrong or have not been done as well can be improved. That's what I would say to this.
Wow. Thanks so much. Now, we've just started. And yes, I agree. Crises are many and they're going to be frequent. But then just from Dr. Musimbi's response, another question comes as we get into other serious questions. Crises are frequent. Is it the failure of the supranational bodies to respond to them effectively? And where does the power lie? Is it with the capital or the political?
What is that? Is it with the?
Is it with capital or the political?
Dr. Abraham?
Okay. I started more from a broader picture, but let me come down further. And I really appreciate Dr. Musimbi's comment of asking us where exactly do we place ourselves. Now, one thing is that we need to appreciate that we as individuals play within a broader political and economic space. That is not something. One thing that COVID has shown us, maybe to a larger extent than we had appreciated before, is just how what goes on in a village corner in this country called Kenya is affected by what goes on in another place in Kansas, and another place in Ontario, and another place in Wuhan, China, that nobody before COVID even knew existed. And now it's become the big talk, because that's where the first cases were detected. But having said that, at a very basic and an individual level, all of us are players within an economy and are players within the political space. Now, how then do we try and see who can we really blame anyone? Can we really point fingers? Of course, COVID and all the crises that have come before it, there was another crisis. There was an economic crisis in 2008 that was fair. I mean, some people considered it even a meltdown. There has been a political crisis between 2008 and now. you know, starting from Tunisia to, you know, to Egypt, and all those Occupy movements that have been going on, all trying to fight back on the system. And I think the latest even during in India, and now. But secondly, is that whereas these crises are happening, they are driven by a reaction. As individuals, we react to certain things. What Dr. Musimbi is calling us towards is to stop reacting and start being, you know, more, what we would call proactive. In other words, to start setting the pace. Let me come back to the things I talked about earlier and then try and apply them to the question a bit more closer. Do we value people? Now, I lead an organization, and when COVID struck, I still remember on the 15th of March, on the 13th of March, it was on a Friday, Mutahi Kagwe, the cabinet minister for health, announced that we have reported the first case. The first questions that came to me is, how shall I make sure that the people within the organization that I lead can continue to engage in what matters most to them? Now, whereas that question was ringing in my mind, I also knew very well that we had set certain targets and goals for the work that needs to be done for the year. And therefore, I cannot divorce myself from the reality that we, as much as we would like people to basically enjoy their life and continuing, even as the crisis happens, there are still results to be achieved in that. Of course, before long, I think 2 days later, the president announced what he announced, and it was clear we are all heading home. What are some of the things that we did that I think brought to me the reality of what kind of things that we can be able to engage in the spaces that we find ourselves? I think, of course, just like any other leader, the first thing was, do people have a place they can work from home? Do they have desks? Do they have, it's assumed they have electricity. Do they have internet? And at my company, what we did basically was to say, anything you have been using in the office that you think will be of value for you to work with from at home, please take it. Now, it's a small gesture, but the main goal is to say that I value you as a human being, because at the end of the day, there is still a contract that you have signed with a company that requires you to perform and to achieve certain results. But the bigger question is, are there times when even well-meaning processes that all we care about are results, that people are valued or devalued by the kind of results they are providing, so that the beingness, if there's a word like that, is not appreciated, is not acknowledged. And I think when you talk about capital and economics, I think that's what we see, that's what we are struggling with, and the politics of it, where we have so much exalted the positions, the wealth, and the accumulation that comes with that it has completely clouded us from our own responsibility, that at the end of the day, first, we are human beings. And I think one of the biggest things that this evening session should remind us is that we are human beings. We are not human doings. However much we have tried to define ourselves by the things we do, it's interesting that the two presenters today have a doctor title, but I believe that if something was to happen to me right now and I collapse, it's not my doctor title that will save me. It's a nurse in the neighborhood who knows how to do first aid, who will save me. But the point I'm trying to say is that, friends, God has given us the grace and the opportunity to be able to influence the spaces we are in. And it's by acknowledging that we are human beings with that call, and not necessarily just a focus on the human doings. I feel like I have gone further than your question, but I needed just to explain that anytime we exalt results above people, we start losing it completely. And that is the accusation against the political system and against the economic system, the capitalistic system, that it has made human beings to be simply means of production, voters, and consumers. In fact, that's what they are called in those, even, I mean, it's the same language that is used in the matatus. They say beba pesa. They don't say beba mtu. Translated in English, carry money. They say stop, carry money. But what they are seeing is not money. They are seeing a human being. Thank you.
Interesting. Thank you so much, Dr. Abraham. Dr. Musimbi, do you want to add something? Yeah.
Is it capital? I don't know if the question was informed by the word crisis and what crisis is, or how they were informed by that word, because it would appear as if the crises are actually caused by the governance. I think it's important to understand that a crisis is a crisis. Nobody wanted to have a COVID crisis. Nobody wanted to have an economic, whatever it is. And that's why we call it a crisis, because we're going along a certain road, again, as Dr. Abraham said, that we're going towards a certain end. Let's say that for us in Kenya, we are going towards a certain Vision 2020. And then something happens that stops the train from going forward. And that is what we would call a crisis, that we cannot continue to go forward. Now, when we have governance, governance has a responsibility to make decisions. What do we do at this particular point? Now, we in Kenya have decided that we are going to give that responsibility to certain people who are going to go into government to make those decisions, and we are supposed to hold them accountable to those decisions. And so it boils down to how have we understood this? I was listening to the, I think he's called the Administrative Secretary in the Ministry of Health, and the Chief Secretary Administrator. And he was giving an account of how the country has been able to deal with this particular crisis. And so along the way, they had to make certain decisions. And when you have a crisis, you are in a situation where everything is volatile. Everything is a bit complex. Everything is uncertain. You don't know. And then you have certain decisions and complexities that you have to come through. And so those decisions sometimes have to be risk-taking. For example, when they say stay at home, they are taking that risk, hopefully for the benefit of all Kenyans, because they have seen that it's something that has been done by others, or they have learned, or they've gotten information, hopefully to make such a decision. Now, in our eyes, we may think this is very unfair. This is not right. How can we be made to stay at home? We don't have anything to eat. And so what are we going to do? Are we going to survive this situation? A lot of people in the office block that I work in have had to leave because it is not possible for them to sustain the rent. And yes, was there utu, as what Abraham is talking about in terms of thinking of the people, was it taken into consideration? Perhaps the whole idea of making us stay at home was for us to remain healthy enough to continue to be on the train to go towards 2020 or 2030. But then we still have to ask ourselves, what part have we played in this? And I'm just hoping that if we recognize that a crisis such as this, if not worse or slightly as much, would come along again, that all of us here on this particular call this evening, or this particular conference this evening, are going to sit down together and analyze the kind of crisis that we've been through and see where things could have been better done, so that the next we can present this to those who are in governance as part of our responsibility to be able to see, did they take the right risks? Did they have insufficient? I remember the administrator saying, well, the good news about COVID is that we now have more beds in hospitals, which was something that we were hoping to have universal health coverage. And so that's a result that Dr. Abraham is talking about. But then I don't know whether they have realized the effects of the whole situation on the populace of the entire Kenya, right? They were hoping to have these beds in place. They were not hoping to have it done under a crisis situation. And so do we have the capital? The capital would be, again, as I said earlier, in the capacity and the competence of the leaders who are taking those responsibilities to take the right risks, to take the right decisions, and to make the right move in order for the country to be at its best despite what it would have gone through. And so I don't know whether it's a capital in terms of money, whether it's a capital, but indeed, even if you have money, you need the right people to be able to utilize it efficiently and effectively for a good end. And so I don't know if I've addressed the person who asked the question. If they would like a little bit more, I'll be happy to add to that. But I think the capital, the main capital is in the people, and the people that we select to put in those places of responsibility.
Wow, awesome. Yeah. So I've just been listening to Dr. Musimbi's response, and I'm thinking, wow, it's not even the capital, but the right people. I totally agree. And well, just before we get to the next question, I want to remind us, them that have joined us when we had started, please feel free to post your questions on the chat room. You can send to me directly, you can send to Karaoke, or you can just post to the panelists directly. So this conversation takes us, now it's now growing deeper and deeper. And now the next question is, Kenyans are currently faced with many challenges. And from the panelists' responses, we could feel, yeah, the challenges are already mentioned. Yeah, talk about the persistent corruption, talk about poor economy, talk about the COVID-19, not forgetting the BBI. Yeah, I don't know where the reggae is now anyway. Yeah, and of course the looming election period. And so as Kenyans who are thinking about ethics and who want to be ethical, even in our leadership, in our living, in our operation, we are asking ourselves, what is our personal responsibility in light of all this? Yeah, I'm asking myself, what is my personal responsibility in light of all this? And I know many of us are asking ourselves that. So maybe we can hear from Dr. Rugo. Yes, Karibu, Dr.
Asante, well, maybe I should allow you, please. You can use Abraham. It's a fair name that was given by my father and mother. The rest I have struggled along. I think a society gets what it chooses to get. And in a society like ours that has almost gotten to a point where greed, you know, fake it till you make it, is the running mantra. And in a society where few people care about how you made your wealth, they only celebrate that you have it. There are some certain things that we seem to have accepted. And it shocks me that even in some spaces, corruption is bad as long as I am not gaining. So you hear people say, you know, that guy, if I wish I was in his place. And this has permeated so far because, unfortunately, we've allowed the spirit of extraction to be our running software. What do I mean by the spirit of extraction? The spirit of extraction is a spirit that is about what is it I will get out of this. So that the conversation becomes almost like a contractual transaction. It's like a transaction. You go to church, you're told, give your money, God will bless you. So it basically becomes a transaction. And the pastor seems more bothered about what he will get out of you than what you will get. You go to hospital and you are told, before we can respond to your patient, deposit of 100,000 or 200,000, depending on which hospital you arrive at first. And the same thing happens to school. You go and you want your child placed in a school and you are told, wekelea macho. And you get stuck in, your car breaks down and the guys who come to help you ask you, na unatoa nini? Basically, what are you giving us so that we can help you? That's the unfortunate part. But the fortunate part is that even in that system, there are many, and I believe many who are even in this call, who have not bowed to Baal, who have chosen the narrow route of obedience, of integrity, sometimes at very high cost. Let me say this as it is. The reason why I believe our country's governance system, and governance here includes our social governance, whether you think about church and religious governance, corporate governance, political governance, has not collapsed, is because there are many men and women who are doing the right thing every day. Even within those spaces where there looks like everything is just in shambles, there are people, just like the honest accountant within a casino, who are doing the right thing in the midst of gamblers and in the midst of extractionists. Then what then becomes our responsibility? Our responsibility is twofold. I think one is, in this crisis, is to choose which side we stand. You cannot sit on the fence. You cannot watch the happenings. You have to choose which side you belong to and be faithful. If you choose the side of doing the right thing, of integrity, then you have to choose to engage from a point of integrity. So you cannot, for instance, talk about BBI from a distance. You must choose to engage with it so that you are able to say, the reason why I don't support it is because of the following. You cannot sit on the fence as far as matters corruption are concerned. You have to choose that as far as it concerns me, I am going to be honest in my dealings. I am not going to steal from my employer. I am going to be faithful in what I have chosen to engage in. But a second one is to know that the day to do the right thing is never tomorrow, is today. Often you get this sense that people assume that I will do the right thing. The reason why this company is not doing well is because I'm not the CEO. The day I become the CEO, you will see the kind of transformation I will bring into this place. The reason why this church of ours is in a mess is because of the pastor. If I was the pastor, if I was the youth leader, if I was the, the truth of the matter is you only become what you're already becoming. And that greater opportunities, just like more money reveals the condition of your heart. I remember it must be John Nganga, and I think he's in this call, who told us, if you cannot tithe from 100 shillings, I was a student in KU then, you will not tithe from 100,000 shillings because that will be too much a burden. If you cannot part with 10 shillings, you will not be able to part with 10,000 shillings. In other words, the faithfulness in what is considered small is what God calls us. And God will not judge us for the things he never brought our way. He will judge us for the things that were obvious to us. So it's being faithful in our families. It's being faithful in that job, in that classroom, in that exam, and engaging from a point of information. We cannot speak from hearsay. We cannot speak and engage from a distance. Salt only makes its impact when it gets out of the salt shaker. As long as it's in there, it's that salt, and the food still remains without any salt. The last thing I wanted to say is that we must not fear to muddy our hands. Some of us have chosen integrity through staying away from the dirt. But the light is revealed in darkness, and salt is revealed in unsalted food. So we have to get ourselves muddied and dirty, But that does not mean we need to dirtify ourselves. There's a difference. You can choose to engage. Daniel did not work in a godly environment. In fact, he worked in a government that was so much corrupt that the only punishment God could give the king was to make him eat grass for 7 years. Sidhani kuna kiongozi wetu amefika hapo. Or maybe God is sparing us. I mean, God made Nebuchadnezzar, for how corrupt he was, to eat grass. But Daniel brought a change. Not by trying to change the people, but by revealing the God he served in that system, in that process. So we cannot sit from the side. Thank
you. Thank you, Terry. Yeah. I was just thinking as you were speaking, and my mind goes back again to the fact that when we come together as a group of people, whether it's some of the societal groups that you're talking about, or even as a nation, when the nation came together, they decided to have something called a constitution. I've referred to this earlier. And I'm looking at the fact that the first statement in that constitution is about acknowledging the supremacy of God, the creator of all. And so if we can all come from that perspective, we don't even need anything else in the constitution, because we will be doing everything from a God-centered perspective. And so then our constitution would be the Bible. And it pertains to life, and it pertains to godliness. That which is our responsibility as leaders, as human beings, as members of society, wherever we are, that is where we are supposed to come from. I heard somebody say the other day that without a moral vision, it's a waste of time to do whatever it is that you're trying to do. You need to have that moral compass as an individual so that you are led and you shall be known by your fruit. As Abraham says, if you have money, money by itself is not corrupt. It depends on the person who is utilizing that money. I can use that money to bless a person. I can use that money to pay a person to kill a person. It is you, the individual, who decides what to do with that money and who decides whether you're going to be seeking and have a love for money, or whether you're going to utilize that money as a tool that is going to get you the blessing, not only for yourself, but for others also. And so I come back to the first statement, acknowledging the supremacy of God, who is the creator of all. Because we're looking at this as in terms of what is my personal responsibility. My responsibility is to do all things heartily as unto God. And if I am to do that, will I be involved in corrupt dealings? Will I be involved in passing certain things that are not in alignment with my biblical values? Have I aligned myself to the values? We even talked earlier about the various different values within our constitution. Have I taken the responsibility to know what those values are? And you can find them in the second chapter of the Constitution in Article 10. And there are quite a number of them. And am I imbibing those values so that when I am tempted, I am not going to be tempted more than I am able? Am I strengthening myself as an individual to speak courageously with confidence and courage and have that consistency, as we heard earlier, to be able to do the right thing at the right time in the right place to get the right result? My personal responsibility, so that when I have done the right thing, is God going to say, well done, my good and servant, or my good and son, whatever, my good son. So when we are looking at corruption, it takes two to be corrupt, basically. We had a Zoom meeting one time, and the question was, who is corrupt, the giver or the receiver? I was quite surprised to see that some people had actually put the receiver as the one who is corrupt. And I couldn't understand that. It meant that within their minds, if I don't receive, then I'm not corrupt. But I didn't know whether they meant that if I don't give, then I'm also not corrupt. I didn't quite understand that understanding. But the idea is that, are you doing the right thing? Is it a corrupt deal that you're entering into? Are you finding it the easier way to go? And then when it comes to something like the COVID situation, we've covered it quite well. Am I taking the personal responsibility to do the right thing, even first of all for my family? I was very saddened because I heard the other day from someone who has a neighbor and she has 2 small children. And these 2 small children have been inside the house since March. They live within a community where other children are playing outside and the parents are quite careful to see that they are properly attended to. But this particular individual has taken a personal responsibility to keep her children inside the house. Now, if we had that individual within leadership, we would have probably all still be inside the house. And what does it say about what she understands, if she is a Christian, concerning fear? Because what happens to a lot of us is that we allow fear to get into us. Fear of, quote, the looming elections. Fear of the fact that, oh my goodness, did I do the right thing? Ideally, when we become natural at doing what is right, we will know when we are not doing what is right. And so what is my personal responsibility? It's about me making sure that I am the sort of person that no matter what anybody says about me, I will not argue because it will be correct. You have the self-confidence of knowing that your values that you have imbibed for yourself are not reproachable. Is that the right word? I think you understand what I'm trying to say. But then we have something else that's come up called BBI. I was listening to someone speak the other day and she said, when you read the BBI, look for that thing which is going to make life better for you as an individual. Now, Abraham has said, read it, get involved, all right? But if I don't know what is in the BBI, and then I listen to the corrupt people who are trying to do things that are not right with respect to my values, and I don't know, in fact, how to participate as the Constitution requires of me as a personal responsibility to participate in an action such as that. Do I sign or do I not sign? What does it even say about me? Is it about other people that I'm trying to put people into certain positions like some people ask? Or is it about a little something that could even have been easily done by legislation in Parliament? Why do I even have this particular document? And you can't ask those questions without engaging. You need to have an idea of what it is talking about. You need to have an idea of why it is even available to the Kenyan people, so that we can ask the question, do we need to have a referendum or do we not? So that it's not something that is going to become a fear factor. There are those who ask, where's the responsibility of the people who are in government? Why are they spending so much money on something and they're not spending money on doctors' health who are out in the front line of the COVID? And these are questions that are probably also encumbering people's minds. And so rather than have the fear that has been put in us with respect to this particular pandemic that we have, where is our trust? And where is our response rather than our reaction? So that we can respond to it from a point of knowledge. And that means that we need to be able to increase information about things that we as individuals have a responsibility to participate in. And I read somewhere, I heard from someone one time, and they said, no is an honorable and a holy answer also, an anointed answer. Because sometimes we get pushed into doing things when we should have said no. But you must take a personal responsibility so that when you say yes or when you say no, you can live with your conscience. Do not allow other people to determine for you what the future is for you. Allow them and play your part, so that when you have done your part, then you allow what now, unfortunately, we have accepted as democracy. If the majority win, then the majority will take the responsibility. All right? But at the same time, we're looking at personal responsibility. What is my personal responsibility? Do I know about chapter 10? ELNET is about leadership. Chapter 6, excuse me, in the Constitution. I keep going back to this because any organization that has governance has a constitution or a document that decides how that particular organization is going to go. And so if I have a responsibility in a board, I need to understand the constitution or the charter of the board. If I am in a particular committee, I need to understand what is that church's constitution. Am I making decisions contrary to what everybody has agreed upon in terms of decision making? I need to take that personal responsibility to inform myself so that any decision that I offer or I make is informed as a result of what I have learned concerning the matter at hand.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Musimbi and Dr. Abraham, for such a quite informative response. And well, I'm just getting challenged as we continue and all that. And one thing I picked from Dr. Abraham is assault can never make impact until it's out of the salt shake. And of course, the same has been mentioned by Dr. Musimbi that your personal responsibility is just to do the right thing at the right time and all that. And now this brings us to the next question of now walking the talk and the implications that come with walking the talk. And so the question here is, what would be the benefits or the risk in taking ethical individual action to mitigate the crisis? Yeah, what would be the benefits or the risk in taking ethical individual action to mitigate the crisis? So let's start with Dr. Abraham. Over to you, Dr. Abraham.
Yeah, thanks. I know it's very easy. In fact, when I was listening to Dr. Musimbi, it's very easy to talk about being of integrity and to be ethical, even in business and in the work. But the reality is that it's not easy. And therefore, we are not here to discuss stuff, things that are easy and that we have conquered. I use my own example for benefit of this conversation. And when I meet a friend and he asks me, so you are in charge of about 70 million budget every year. So what's your cut in it? And I look surprised. What do you mean by my cut in it? I say, but well, all I know is that I'm paid a salary and a couple of allowances that come with my position, and that is it. And it's almost expected, and that's what I'm talking about. It's almost expected that there is no way you can be in charge of a pool of resources and not keep some for yourself on the side. After all, according to some quarters, it is not wrong. You know, you basically being smart about how you are making decisions and how you choose suppliers and kind of engagement. It is not easy. A second example, that before the position I took, I was a consultant, as you rightly noted. And when my employer gave me the job I got directly conflicts with the consultancies I used to do because it's in the same field. So one of the things that my employer asked me both verbally and I have signed on my contract is that I will not, and of course everybody signs that clause, I will not engage in any other paid or unpaid employment or assignment. And of course I signed that I will also not engage in things that I will declare anywhere there is a conflict of interest. But here I come, I go to somewhere a talk, and I'm told we are going to pay you some money. In fact, I remember in one place we were given cash money. This was a government function. So we were given cash money, and all we needed to do was to sign. And it was two of us. I mean, it was many of us, but I was given cash money. And I still remember as I took that money and walked into a bank, which I rarely do because nowadays we swipe cards and use ATMs, and deposited it to the company account. Now, it's very easy to say, after all, nobody will be aware. Nobody will know about it. But I want to confirm to people here that it's not easy. It's a daily decision and a daily struggle. And I think from the time you decide you're going to do things the right way, you are challenged on a daily basis with opportunities to just go the other opposite direction. So what is one of the benefits? One of the benefits, and as I said, I'll use my own example, is that as I looked 2-3 weeks ago, I realized we have about 110,000 in the organizational account, and therefore all I asked my board is, can I give this as vouchers to my colleagues, to everybody? Yet this is money that was given to me in different speaking engagements, and I said I will not receive it as an individual because I already have an agreement that this is, I'm not going to be paid extra. Now everybody is going to be getting something for their Christmas by virtue of I choosing to do the right thing. I could have kept that money. I could have, nobody would have known. After all, they don't know whether I was being paid. There's no contract that they have seen. Friends, I think what I'm saying is that it's a daily struggle. I'm not saying it has been easy. It's a daily struggle to walk in integrity about the resources that you have, to walk in integrity with the power that you have, and to walk in integrity even in terms of sexual purity, which sometimes is never discussed in forums like this. But it's a daily struggle. You know, the fact that I have a ring and I'm married for 12 years does not stop me from admiring others and others admiring me. But it's a daily choice that when I leave the office, I am going to drive home. I'm going to focus straight home. I'm not going to go, the route I use, some of you may know it, Lenana Road, has got, I think, one of the highest concentration of massages and spas, I think, in the city of Nairobi. You know, right from Galana Road, where you have B Club, you know, down to Heron Portico. It's a very interesting. But that when I leave my office at Kilimani Business Center, I will drive straight home without diverging to places where, you know, yet I can tell my wife, you know, I delayed in a meeting, I was meeting this client, I was meeting that person. It's a daily struggle. But I think the risk is a choice that many people have had to make, and I know this from even friends who I interact with, of choosing that it's okay. I will not buy that house that costs 20 million shillings this year. I may not get promoted in my job fast because I'm not taking corners. I'm not reporting on results that don't exist. I'm not giving bottom lines that basically are cooked up. And therefore, there's that reality that your career may not necessarily move at the speed that you want. But there are certain favors you may not get because you have chosen to do the right thing. I remember when I was an assistant program officer a couple of years ago. One time, every time we went, those were the days before a lot of M-Pesa had taken root, and therefore you traveled with cash money for workshops. And therefore you will be given, you know, you're impressed 200,000, you put it in your pocket, and you go. That's the money you will pay for any expenses on the way, for fuel, and also to reimburse participants in those meetings. Now, a lot of games used to go on about that money because nobody knows how many people showed up for that meeting. You are the only one. And you can create receipts if you so want to create receipts. And I remember somebody asked me, so why do you always return all this money? Why next time, why don't you bring me the money? Because what I will do, I will bring the money and I'll do the reconciliation myself and sign at the bottom. I have returned so much. And now that was a real test because I was basically starting in my career. I was being paid a salary that I thought I should have been paid much better than that. The point I'm trying to say, that an obvious risk is that you can even lose the opportunities that you have, and some people have lost those opportunities. It may mean that you will not drive that car that you want to do, that you desire to drive like everybody else sooner as you would want. It may also mean that then you become the secluded person who is not involved when decisions, when deals are being discussed, and people don't even call you because they know you will spoil the deal. You know, you are the guy who is never called. But the benefit of peace and serenity and the joy of knowing that what I have is what I deserve, I think surpasses the risks. That's what I would say. And I believe that God rewards those who are faithful. If with nothing else, with peace of mind. Thank you.
Thank you very much. They say that a lot of people are looking for immediate gains. And so are we looking at today and tomorrow, or are we looking at eternity? Are we looking to leave a legacy, or are we looking to just live our lives out? Why did the old man build the bridge? And somebody came to him and said, "Old man, why are you building this bridge here? You don't have many years ahead of you. You're not going to be walking on this bridge." And he said, "My friend, there are many who will come this way, and there are many who will need to have this bridge to cross this place." And so why do we do these things? What are the benefits? The benefits may not be necessarily to me. If I am so minded that I need to do the right thing so that tomorrow my children, my grandchildren, and the generations that come after me will have a better chance than what I did, or a better opportunity than what I did, then I need to do the right thing for those who come after me. Today we were having an interesting discussion because of the need in leadership. As I step out of chiropractic, I'm going into coaching, and I'm doing leadership and life coaching. And so we were together with a number of coaches just today. And there was one particular one of us who was giving us a story about how a relative of his offered to deposit X amount of M shillings into his account. And then we can actually come and remove the same money, not very long from there, but we'll leave 0.5 of M for you. I say, hey, for what? The thing is that the gentleman was very, very, very upset. Why? Because he couldn't understand that his relative didn't know him well enough. And so when you walk the talk, sooner or later, people will know, as Dr. Abraham has said, that you are not the sort of person that you should go to when they're looking to make deals of corruption, or when they're looking to do something that is not right according to what you know is right. And so that consistency that we talked about with Dr. Oginde, or that Dr. Inde talked about yesterday, is very important. And the benefits may not be immediate, they may be eternal. They may be there for you. People like Martin Luther King decided that they will go to the end, and he was ready to give his life in response, or in place of finding the results of what he was fighting for. And so risk is going to be taken whenever you're doing something that other people are not so happy about. And because we talked about crisis, for example, being change leadership is messy. Change leadership has all those risks that you must take, but then you need to make a decision. And decision, as Abraham has said, needs to be made on a daily basis, that I will continue to do this because it is the right thing in God's eyes to do. God is the one who will reward you. It may not look so apparent in that point in time, But because you are doing the thing that is right, sooner or later, your reward will come. Let's not look for immediate rewards. When we're looking for immediate rewards, that's why we get into those deals that are corrupt. That's why we compromise our values. That's why we find ourselves in situations that are very difficult to make decisions in because we have entertained. This gentleman this morning did not entertain these people. He told them, excuse me, I have other things to do. I do not think that I need to discuss this further with you. It is not the right thing to do, and I am not interested, and I am not going to be part of it. And so when we have stances like those ones, and then we are many of us who are taking those stances, hopefully we shall be an example to others, to the point where those who actually do take that stand increase in number. It is an embarrassment to have our country be at the top almost of corrupt countries when we ourselves are considering ourselves as the 80% Christian. It's because we have not imbibed those values. What values are you living with? So that you don't need to ask the question, what is the benefit? So that when you are living out your values, it is already a blessing to you to be able to do that in an environment that does not consider those values as valuable to them. What is it that you are, why is it that you are doing what you are doing? Is it for you to have immediate gain? Or are you thinking about, for example, your family? What informs the decisions that you make so that you're not looking for immediate gains? We say that God is the one who will open the windows of heaven and pour you out a blessing that there will be not enough room to receive. But if he does not see the consistency and he sees the yumba yumba, what is he going to do? Is he going to bless? And are you going to get the benefit of walking the talk? Or are you going to lose it by virtue of not walking the talk? And so think about posterity, do not think about immediate gain, and begin to see the value in doing that rather than the strain of doing it. And you will continue to do it through many years ahead for the rest of your life.
If I could add something.
Yes, Abraham.
Yeah, allow me just to add this, that because I said all of us are vulnerable, why I started with the point of accepting that you are a human being is that human beings have certain characteristics, and one of them is that we are fallen. You know, we are fallen, and from time to time we actually do make mistakes. Not only make mistakes, sometimes we actually live the very opposite of the values that we subscribe to and we live for. But I think there is need for us to keep reminding ourselves it's because of that very human nature that God calls us to a life of redemption, a life of restoration, you know, and that God does not stop, you know, to restore us back, to receive us back to his fold simply because we have crashed. You know, so you don't have to now continue being corrupt because after all, you did it one time and therefore you say, now this is me, you know. Just like when you fall in the mud and you're walking, going to work, you don't sit there the whole day, you know, and saying, you see, I've fallen in the mud, now I can't go to work. You know, you go and try to change your clothes and proceed to where you're going. I think I need to emphasize the point that God calls us to a life of redemption and also calls us to help others experience his redemption. In other words, is the whole concept around redemptive leadership, that God calls us to experience his redemption and to be instruments of his redemption in this world. The interesting part is that some of the people God uses for the redemption purposes are not necessarily redeemed themselves. This is what I mean, that you will find there are people who do not necessarily honor God in their hearts, but they do the right thing. You know, they pay their workers well. They, you know, they do that which, and that's what God says, he will sort the sheep and the goats at the right time. But what of us who claim to follow him and live for him, but still mistreat our house helps? You know, but still mistreat our workers in the office, that if people in the office learn that we actually believers, they are in shock. You know, they cannot connect. Oh, you mean that guy is born again? I know, no. We are not talking about the same person. You know, again, allow me to refer to John Nganga, who is in this call. He once gave us an example and said, suppose somebody from your home, somebody from your school, somebody from your company, somebody from the matatu that you commonly use, or even your Uber driver, were to be put in the same room without consulting each other and asked to describe Abraham. Would they arrive at the same conclusion? Would they describe the same person? Or they will all come out with 5 different Abrahams? You know, because you are different characters in different spaces. But without losing the point, God calls us to a life of redemption. And I believe redemption is a daily thing, that God desires that we come to him and say, Lord, deliver me today, because I don't know what I will meet on the way, you know. And I think part of the daily bread is the grace to stand and do the right thing. You know, it's a spiritual bread to be able to say no to evil and yes to godliness. Thank you.
So what I would say, Clarion, I would probably try to add to us that what we are looking for are ethical leaders in governance. Because when we have those ethical leaders who have subscribed to moral values that are now working heartily as unto God and have decided to walk the talk and talk the walk, then we can have the kind of leaders in place and our people will not be destroyed. And so I think, you know, as we talk about all of this, my personal responsibility in a point of crisis is to do the thing that I must do. And then when it comes time for us to put people in governance, I must also do the right thing. And I would want to encourage others, because as leaders, we have influence and we need to spread that sort of influence to others so that the critical mass is absolutely available for the people to be able to choose the right person. We are still looking for that individual whom we can look at, who has no reproach, who would be what we now let's say is blameless, the person who is empowering, the person who is visionary, the person who is inclusive, the person who has the family at heart. And those are the kind of leaders who have the ethics and the right moral vision and the right moral values, which we can actually multiply and perhaps, hopefully, get to a place where this country, that sort of person will be in the top leadership of the nation, so that we as a people can enjoy knowing that we have put the right people in governance, so that even in a point of crisis, they can make the right decisions, that they can consider the people, have the right values to be able to lead us forward to the vision that has been set for this particular country. We do have a destiny as this country, but it's going to be up to us as individuals to have the influence on others so that we can actually achieve that which we desire to see in terms of governance in this nation, whether at the highest level or even at company level, board level, whatever level, county level, all these levels where we have issues of governance that we are concerned about.
Well, thank you so much. As a person, I'm really learning much, and I'm so challenged by tonight's session. Yeah, to walk the talk despite everything. And so we'll be wrapping it up in a few minutes' time. But before then, I'll open the forum to any person who has a question. You can just either by show of hand or just type your question on the chat room. And so we already have a question from Kahoro Washira, and the question is, how can we bring back patriotism and regard for human dignity? How do we make sure that each one plays their part? And so I don't know who wants to come first.
Be the example.
Yeah, maybe.
Be the example and influence others, because a little leaven will eventually bring the leaven to rise, the bread to rise. That's the
Wow.
part as individuals we can play.
Awesome.
Yeah, live like a human being. I think it starts there. Yeah. You know, all we are looking for are human beings, because human beings appreciate they are frail.
Of good character.
Yeah, yes, of course. I'm coming there. Human beings of good character, but the point being that we appreciate that the same way we struggle to do the right thing, the same way others are struggling, so that we judge others with the same measure we judge ourselves. You know, many times we put a very high standard for others, and we put a very low standard for ourselves, you know, and we say, for me, it's okay. But for those other guys, that was very, very, very bad. When we walk in that journey, then people see the authentic life that we are living, and therefore that we are not these people who drop on earth in the morning and then disappear at night to some other space. No, 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 no. And that's what our children see. That's what our colleagues see. That's what the small crowd in church see for a couple of hours on Sunday. Nowadays, they don't even see, they sit on Zoom. But the reality is the people who spend every day with you, those are the people who see your humanness, your appreciation of your fallenness, and the need for God's grace for forgiveness on a daily basis. As we make choices to do the right thing and to go in the right places at the right time, that's what others see. And it's amazing what example does. And especially good examples. I know often we talk about bad examples, but it's amazing what kind of good examples can make a difference in society.
Well, I hope, Washira, you are answered. And so I can see, I have no other question from my end. I don't know if Karaoke has a question from his end, but then,
I do.
Okay.
Actually, there is a number of people following us on Facebook, and this question is from our Facebook page by Dennis Cheruyot. He is asking, we need as a country to rethink the way we do anti-corruption in Kenya. Why is it that we seem not to see progress, even though there is a body dedicated to fight corruption? I hope that is clear.
Yes.
Yeah, it's very clear. Corruption cannot be fought by an organization. Corruption is fought by individuals who have chosen that they are going to abide by the rule of law, first and foremost.
Wow.
Yes, the important thing is not to look at others and see whether the others are the ones who are going to actually make this animal go away. Am I making the right decision when I am placed in a situation where I have to make a decision as to do the right thing or not? This gentleman I talked about this morning, he made the decision not to go into a corrupt deal. And how many of us are doing that? Are we showing other people that this is not the right way to do things? Are there more of us being able to do that so that others can learn from us? So let's not look at the organizations. We can be very disappointed with them. But then again, today we're looking at personal responsibility in terms of governance. And as I said earlier, we can come together, and if we have those ideas that are able to take this country forward, let's put those ideas in paper, let's put them on, these days it's digital, so that we can hand them in to where we see that governance not being done, not having done the right thing. Because as Abraham has said, we have not seen what that particular organization is supposed to be doing. If they are working behind the scenes, it's unfortunate because Kenyans need to see what it is that they are doing. I know, for example, that is it the public prosecutor who has said that much as we know that there are so many people who should be in court, he started off with a lot of fire, but eventually he decided to hone in on those particular individuals where he knows he has sufficient evidence to bring them forward. And sometimes what can be done there is that you can bring forward those ones who have done the wrong thing, and they should be punished in such a way that it should be a lesson to those who are looking to do the same thing. I know that in America, when they had early rule of law, they would hang people who had done certain atrocities within their society. And it was important for all people within that community to come and watch the hanging, from the little child to the oldest man, so that they would see that this is the price of doing the wrong thing. And so if we can begin to see, hopefully, the prosecutions taking place and having the punishment done, hopefully it will teach others that this country, Kenya, does not necessarily want those kind of people. But then it's also up to us. Do we report the corruption that goes on? Do we give that 200 shillings to that policeman who stops us so that we have to make it to work on time? I've been stopped a number of times, and believe you me, I have made my apology or I have tried to do my case, but I do not give bribes. I ask for permission, I ask for forgiveness. And it's not easy because people are too much in a hurry in this life that we do to be able to do what? To be able to carry on doing whatever they're doing. And it's just a small 200 shillings after all. All right. So are we in that state, or are we doing the right thing ourselves? Let's multiply ourselves. Yesterday, I believe that Dr. Ginda gave his, for those of us who may not have been here, he gave his example of how he refused for the Matatu people to overload the vehicle because it was contrary to the law that was in place. Are we also standing up for that kind of thing? There was a time during that time of Bishuki where the Kenyan people were actually taking the police to task, and we lost that opportunity because we began to see that even the policemen themselves, but then when people began to go back to quote normal, then things changed. But if we had persisted in terms of holding people to account, I believe that if we continue to do something like that, we can actually make some headway in terms of reducing the corruption. Unfortunately, those whom we have put in place, and why I look for those people who are those blameless people and who can be able to lead this path along a path of righteousness, then we are in a better position. But then, unfortunately, those people who are currently in position, a good majority of them have their own closets, cobwebs in their closets, and they're not able to say that this is not done right because somebody else will come back and say, but you have also. So they don't throw stones in glass houses. Let us continue to see where we can participate to make the change necessary. Let us be responsible to be able to have the right values. I know, for example, that there is a group of Kenyans who are currently making sure that the people within their community have the right capacity. Everybody is doing master's programs and PhD programs, but they may not be the right people that we're looking for in position. But because they will have the capacity, then they are the ones who will get those positions while we are still sitting waiting to see what will be done. So let us add capacity to ourselves so that we are able to go out into the field, take the right positions, make the right decisions so that we can reduce that corruption. It is possible. With God, all things are possible. But are we ready to do it? Are we ready to take up the mantle and be responsible? There are those of us, of course, she didn't mention it, but I have run for office a couple of times because I thought maybe that was the place to be, to make a difference. I lost both times, but I learned a lot. The Kenyan people are ignorant. Can we teach them? Can we let them know what it means to elect? Can we be participating in civic education? Can we be participating even in these political parties that make decisions? Can we be even in these particular fora where we are looking to make decisions that are going to affect the entire country? Let us add capacity to ourselves so that we are in those positions of decision-making that are going to impact the country in a positive way. Clarion, are you still there?
Yes. Thank you so much. That is quite profound. Maybe we can just, for the interest of time, I wish we had all the day discussing about this, but then for the interest of time, there's a question in the chat room. The question is to Dr. Musimbi. Are we failing as Christians in spreading the good news of the word of God, especially to the 80% of the population that professes the Christian faith? Oh, I hope the question is clear.
I've heard that figure, and I've also used it here this evening. I would want to say that I am not so sure because we don't see the impact in terms of the percentage that we talk about. When Dr. Oginde, Bishop, was handing over to the new bishop, there was a gentleman who came from South Africa to give the keynote speech. What I remember from what he said, and he has been a freedom fighter, he has gone through torture, he has gone through all sorts of things for his country and for his people. And now he is a preacher man who goes into those very difficult areas to help people with that kind of utu that Dr. Abraham is talking about. And what he said is that the church needs to step up. The church, the body of Christ, needs to step up. We need to be at the forefront of decision making. We need to be in situations where there is a desire to have the right thing done. We need to be able to also express ourselves efficiently and efficaciously in every given situation. And so to answer your question, unfortunately, I agree that the church is not doing what it is supposed to do. But the church is all of us. Again, it comes back to individuals. The church, the body of Christ, is made up of all the individuals who have professed Christ as their savior. That is the church. It's not all saints. It's not St. Andrews. It's not the Holy Spirit to Holy Ghost church. It's about you, the individual, who is a part of that church. And are you doing your thing? Are you the salt that Abraham is talking about to go out there and actually make a difference in the flavor of our society? And so let's take it upon ourselves. When Jesus Christ left, he said, I am going, but I am going to leave, I'm going to have my Father send you a helper. Are we walking by the Spirit? That's the question. Do we recognize the power that we have? We can talk about greater is he that is in us than he that's in the world, but are we utilizing that power to be able to speak with authority and recognize that we have something to say in any given situation? And so if we as Christians can recognize that we are powerful and greater is he that is in us than he that's in the world, yes, we can do a lot of things. But we are sitting on our laurels. Maybe some of us have done some things and we are sitting pretty. We are not there to do what Jesus Christ said we should do. I am leaving, but you guys continue to do what I have been doing and even more. Are we out there as the people would say, that one, of course she's a Christian. You shall know them by their fruit. And so are we known by our fruit? That's the question. Sometimes they have laughed at us as a church. And that's why we're allowing other individuals who should not be in positions of influence to come and take over the very things that we as Christians are supposed to do. And so let's challenge ourselves to be the salt of the earth, to be the light, to be the people who have that courage, bold as a lion, and being able to do whatever it needs to do, whatever needs to be done, so that indeed this country can have righteous leadership and the people can have a good life. Now you can tell us, Sadaka.
Thank you so much. Indeed, tunafaa kutoa sadaka. But then I want to allow Dr. Abraham to maybe just give his closing remarks in a minute time, because we are really, our time is well spent. And so just 1 minute, your last words. Then Musimbi also will give her last words. Then I'll hand over to karaoke. So over to you, Dr. Abraham.
So you've seen I've changed my name, and I would like you to read what I have written there as a sentence.
Yeah, God is nowhere. Yeah, God is nowhere.
Great.
Is
Musimbi
now here.
and the other colleague. Somebody else read it. Just unmute and read.
God is now
God
here.
is now here.
God
Now,
is now here.
Thanks. I want to finish with those words that we can be a Christian, but if your outlook is that God is nowhere, there is nothing that will stop you from doing whatever needs to be done to enjoy what is considered the good life. But friends, when we walk with the reality that God is now here, we become that boy who was told to go and hide the egg. And he looked everywhere and came back with the egg, because he said, wherever I went, God was seeing me. So is your God now here, or is your God nowhere? I pray that we will walk with the reality that God is now here, not to punish you and me we do wrong things, but to give us the strength and the courage to do the right thing. Thank you so much, and God bless you.
Amen, amen. Thank you so much. Over to you, Dr. Musimbi.
We started off by saying that God is the one that we acknowledge, who is the creator of all. Let us continue to acknowledge him in anything and everything that we do. Let us begin to listen, because, you know, I was talking to somebody the other day, and she was saying that in most of the films, God speaks with a loud voice. But then we learn that God speaks. He says, be still and know that I am God. In that stillness, let's listen to God's silent or quiet, not silent, but quiet voice. Let us hear what our particular responsibilities as believers is, so that we can live out that purpose. Let us live according to what we hear from God, and let us see the magic happening within this country. Whether it is in crisis or whether it is not in crisis, God is still the same, and he never changes. And he will use us wherever we need to be used in order to make a difference in this country, so that people will say, yes, these are a people of God. Asante. God bless.
Amen. Asante sana daktari. Indeed, it's been a great session. And just allow me appreciate everyone who's joined us in this wonderful discussion. Thank you so much for joining. My name is Clarion, and we've been discussing these stuff with Dr. Musimbi and Dr. Abraham. So at this time, allow me hand over to Karaoke. Karaoke, are you there? Yeah, over
Yes,
to you.
I'm here. Thank you, Clarion. Good job, good job. Thank you, Dr. Musimbi. Thank you, Dr. Abraham. You have really given us insights into that topic, and especially our, our personal responsibility as individuals, as Kenyans, and also as believers. I want to thank everyone who has joined us today and made this a wonderful evening. I personally had like 2 or 3 questions and a few comments, but time does not allow us. But we will continue to have this even into next year, the deliberations. So I really hope you could join us. Our number has been shared on the chat section. Yeah, you could use that to reach out to us. Follow us on Facebook. Keep in touch, because we will always have these conversations, and I believe they will continue to impact a lot of people as we discuss. So yeah, time is so much spent. I want to invite my brother Simeon. He will do a short vote of thanks and then close with a word of prayer. So Simeon, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I believe you can hear me from wherever you are. Confirm with me if you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you very much. And words will fail me to give thanks on what we have had today and the insight we have received. And God is indeed great. God is indeed great, and He has spoken to us. And I just want to thank God for the second day of our conference. We had a successful one yesterday, and today we are really grateful to God. And again, I can't even thank you enough, Dr. Musimbi and Abraham, for your time. Dr. Abraham, for your time, and you've come to share with us what God had deposited in your heart as you've been directed with the questions, and you are glad, and we say, God bless you. Thank you, Clarion, for helping us moderate the session. Thank you for extracting information from the panelists, for using the question. May God bless you. Thank you for everyone who is on this call. May God bless you. And I just want to say that the conference still continues. We'll be having another session on Monday. We'll have a session on business forum on Monday, such a time as this, from 7:30 to 9. And we'll have a mentorship session on Tuesday at the very same time. So please, all those who are on this call, purpose to attend so that we have it wholesomely. That said, and I want to appreciate the organizing committee and everyone who has made this one to a success. May God bless you. That said, I will pray. Shall we pray? Let's bow our heads. Almighty and everlasting God, we are grateful because of who you are, Lord. Thank you, Lord, for the opportunity you've given every one of us, oh God, even to be on this call, to be reminded of our responsibility in this time of crisis, even God, to remain ethical and with integrity, O King of Glory. And Father, it's a time, Lord, that it is calling us not just to sit and fold our hands, oh God, but we need to stand out to be counted, oh God, to give direction, to set the pace, O King of Glory, because if we are silent, oh God, in this time silence means betrayal, in this time silence means unpatriotic, oh God. And Father, even as your word tells us, how can we do it without you? Because without you, we are nothing, oh Lord. May you empower us, and may you help us, even the insight that we have received, we put them in practice, oh God, so that God, at the end of the day, will look behind and say, were it not for the Lord, oh God, we will not be this far. So, Father, we thank you for the insights that you put in our hearts. May you help us to action them for the glory and honor of your name. Father, we pray for the remaining session as far as this conference. Father, we pray that you'll call people to come and receive what you've purposed in us, for us, O King of Glory. Father, we love you and we exalt you, for there is none like you. In Jesus' name, we believe and pray.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Let us put on our microphones and we say the word of grace. Yeah, everyone, microphone on. So, microphone now, may the grace of
Our Lord Jesus Christ,
And the fellowship of the Holy Spirit
forevermore. Amen.
forevermore.
Thank you so much. May God bless you. We look forward to hosting you on Monday as we look into ethical leadership through crisis in business. Then on Tuesday, we will look at the role of young people in driving change. Yeah, so we really look forward to having you then. God bless you.
Asante.